It doesn't suffer too many 90s sins.
Yes, can we say the same thing, though, about The Rock?
Well, I guess we'll see. Oh, yes, as Scott says, up next is Michael Bay's 1996 action film The Rock, starring Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery as, respectively, Stanley Goodspeed, a chemical weapons expert, and John Mason, an imprisoned former SAS operative and now unperson, who must work together to stop a group of disgruntled former US Marines who have taken over Alcatraz Island from killing their hostages and a good part of the population of San Francisco with some most non-heinous nerve gas. Our unexpected and uncredited contributor here is Mr. Quentin Tarantino, then hot in the heels of Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. Why he chose to do this is not something that seems to be widely known, but his association is enough for us. And, well, just be glad that we didn't go with our other Tarantino option, the Saturday Night Live vehicle, It's Pat, the movie. No, nor us. Which the trailer suggests would make I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry look like Citizen Kane. The Rock, the last of the Don Simpson-Jerry Bruckheimer collaborations, and dedicated to Simpson's memory. Simpson having died before the film's release and whose autopsy was described at the time by the Los Angeles County Coroner as being the most toxic in California history. Which I know is irrelevant, but is far too interesting not to mention. Although I suppose I could have worked it into the film's dangerous chemicals plot. Attracted not just Tarantino to contribute to the script, but also Aaron Sorkin. And at the other end of the unexpected writer spectrum, British writers Dick Clement and Ian Lafreniere brought aboard at Connery's request to rewrite his dialogue. That's Clement and Lafreniere, the noted sitcom writers. You know, whose high-octane action film bona fides include such things as Porridge, Auf Wiedersehen Pet, and Lovejoy?
Now, to be clear, all of these are great, but...
Yes, I suppose at least Porridge had the prison connection going for them. As to whether Tarantino's influence can be felt here, I'm not sure. I feel like there are hints of it in some dialogue-heavy scenes, and perhaps in lines like the one about winners and prom queens, and the Alcatraz hostage and future Borat wife Lunel telling the tour guide, in no uncertain terms, about her gun. And he may have had a hand here and there, but a lot of the film, otherwise entertaining as it is clunky and uneven, and rather like a Michael Bay film in most respects. To damn it with faint praise, it is easily Michael Bay's best film, and his films, even at their worst, look and act like films, a bar many others fail to clear. For instance, there's setup and payoff, like the establishing scene of Cage's Stanley Goodspeed, his proficiency in his chosen field, and his disdain for the use of atropine as an emergency measure. Undermined, alas, by the disguised bomb having a gas mask beside it in the box, or John C. McGinley's non-standard motion detector. Sadly, this latter, and especially the Ed Harris's General Hummel explains his plan scene, are most painfully of the as you know Bob style, and surely unlikely to have come from the pen of Tarantino or Sorkin, though may well have been the work of yet another uncredited screenwriter, Jonathan Hensley, whose credits include Gone in 60 Seconds, Con Air and Armageddon. And I'm also blaming him for the painful, laboured glass or plastic line towards the film's conclusion.
Yeah.
This being Bay's best film owes much more to the cast than the writing, I feel. Connery and Harris are excellent and their mere presence elevates things. And Cage is, as usual, great value. Though here there are only a handful of sentences that he finishes very excitedly and loudly for some reason. Naturally, this is a source of great disappointment. That said, some of the more dialogue-heavy scenes are amongst the most entertaining, particularly those between only Connery and Cage. Scenes notable for a complete lack of cars made entirely of fire, a sin, as we mentioned, that Ronin also commits, camp comic relief characters, the fakest old lady crossing the street I think I've ever seen, or any of the other stuff that makes this a Michael Bay film. Like the flame machine. You know, the flame machine. A machine, naturally still running in a closed-down prison, that spews flames out of the bottom in regular intervals.
You see, if you close the flame machine down, it takes so long to start it back up again. It's really inconvenient, so you've just got to leave that flame machine running 24/7, just in case you need any flames to burn people.
Standard equipment in US penal system, obviously.
Yes.
The flame machine. The action scenes are at least passable, though, and car chases in San Francisco are reliably photogenic. And the crushing of the hippie-styled VW Beetle by the Hummer does tend to get a chuckle out of me, even if it's about as subtle as that gigantic gas-guzzling vehicle itself. And there are a few bits of flair dotted around, like the POV shot of Mason's knife as it flies towards the Marine's throat. While I suspect I'm done with The Rock for the rest of my life, though I had already decided that once and here I am having watched it again, it's easy enough to recommend as a solid 90s action film, with a better, though incredibly uneven script than you might expect. Really, the biggest disappointment is that instead of Raymond O'Connor as a park ranger, Phil Harland wasn't drafted in to reprise his role as Vicky from So I Married an Axe Murderer. A final acknowledgement to the entertaining but clearly bullshit IMDb trivia pages, which we know from personal experience to be, shall we say, susceptible, and it's still there, for anybody who knows what I'm referencing, that for this film provides such amazing and clearly true nuggets as the fact that Arnold Schwarzenegger was considered for both the Connery and Cage roles, as well as, apparently, Nick Cage's role in Face Off, that would have seen him paired with Sly Stallone in the John Travolta role. Please never clean this stuff up, IMDb. I want to live in a world where these things could be true.
Never hesitate. Who wore the long-haired look better? Sean Connery in Zardos or Sean Connery in The Rock? I think I'd go with The Rock. Yes, I was trepidatious again about returning to The Rock, which I've not done for a long time because there's been more than a number of occasions where we look at a late 90s action film that we once loved and realised it was actually kind of not that great. I'm looking at you, Face Off, and with a lot of shared parentage a little bit as well. But no, The Rock is just about as good as I remember it to be, which is to say, it is actually still pretty good. It's a reliably fun and entertaining action movie. Certainly not going to change anyone's life, but as you say, comfortably Michael Bay's best. It's the one that actually feels like could actually have happened on planet Earth, which makes for a nice change. Yeah, it probably would not. I mean, I'm baffled as to how so many people could have got their heads around the script and it still being like this, because the script is bap. It's just not great. There's like the very, very occasional good line, but not something that you would expect from it having gone through apparently most of Hollywood and most of Britain and been rewritten on the way. I'm left with this because it's just not great in terms of most of the dialogue. It's fine. It kind of gets by just because, well, it's Sean Connery and it's Nick Cage. They can get away with quite a lot that most other people wouldn't. Yes. And a lot of the clunkier lines are given to the kind of more, and I don't mean this entirely pejoratively, but clunkier personalities. But yes, the stuff that Ed Harris and Michael Biehn have to put out are kind of like almost insultingly perfunctory, but the roles
Ed Harris can do that because he's Ed Harris. He just brings kind of like gravitas to the roles just by being Ed Harris.
Yeah, they kind of get away with it. Both him and, to an extent, Biehn in this have that kind of, I don't know, school principal kind of vibe to them that kind of makes them get away with that sort of thing. And so, although they have got a lot of the worst lines, they can deliver it the best as they possibly can, at least in terms of their character. And it kind of just about makes it by. If you'd given these to anyone else, it would sound silly. I mean, you certainly cannot imagine Nick Cage delivering any of any of those characters' lines without it sounding absolutely ludicrous. But thankfully, that is not the world in which we have to live in. And instead, we have this, which is pretty good. Still solid action joints all the way around. No real complaints in the way that it manages to balance the action beats with the kind of more little dollops of character development and exposition and sort of banter between the leads. And Yes, it basically all just works as well as it ever did. This holds up very well in terms of an action film, and I would happily recommend this today. It's still better than an awful lot of modernly released action films. And if you have not seen this, I would definitely give this one a look up. It is easily Bay's best, and well, I think at this point we can say he's never going to better this because, well, current experience would show otherwise.
Yes, all experience, frankly. I saw, you're talking of modern action films too, particular ones, but say, cars and things. I saw Fast and the Furious 9 last week, and I saw this yesterday. Guess which one I'd want to watch again, Scott?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say it might be The Rock, which, curiously enough, does not have The Rock in it. So,
no, not as Fast and Furious 9, which is one of its many, many problems. We'll get to that in our next episode. A lot of the supporting cast really aren't great, although they're not given an awful lot to work with.
Yeah.
I think if people like Tarantino and Aaron Sorkin were involved with the dialogue, they've given it to like the main cast. I mean, I could believe that either of those people had worked on some of the kind of repartee between Cage and Connery when they're in the tunnels underneath Alcatraz.
Yeah.
Because it's not just the delivery and who's delivering it. There's a kind of snap to that dialogue that's not anywhere else in the film. Director Womack is just rubbish, isn't he? We're just going front to dialogue, and it's typical of a Michael Bay film, and it's full of lines. But again, this is very far from the only culprit, and it's something I actually watching something just yesterday, although unfortunately I can't remember now, but using lines like, he's a trained killer, so like a soldier then.
Yes.
It's a very common phrase. He's a trained killer, but most of them are. Your country employs like 1 million of them. You want to think about what that phrase means, You'd stand out more if he was an untrained killer, because they're rarer.
He's pro-am.
So he goes, on shooting spree with Bob Barker. Is that how that works?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just the general trappings of this sort of film that let it down. As I said, like all the kind of as you know Bob stuff, which is just so tedious and anything. And it's poor Ed Harris is lumbered with it in this.
Yeah,
and Ed Harris deserves better than that.
He always does. He always does.
Yes, he does. And again, he's so dependable. He's just one of those people kind of just, by being him, he adds gravitas to a scene that generally doesn't deserve it.
Yes.
And that I think that's so key to this being Michael Bay's best film. It's got such three great leads.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of actors actually really like in Armageddon, but Armageddon's absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
This is considerably less nonsense, so that's better. And it doesn't once mention space dementia.
Oh no, he's got San Francisco dementia.
Again, it's not for nothing that I'm suggesting the uncredited screenwriter here that was responsible for Armageddon was also responsible for perhaps the glass and plastic line and some of the other worst things here.
Yes. I always forget about that space dementia line, and then it will always sneak up on me and remind me that it's a thing that exists in an actual film that got made by someone. Sorry.
Yes. It's the way, I can't, Michael Bay often has better actors than he deserves because William Fichtner delivers that line the best anybody possibly could, and way more than he deserves.
It's a real thing.
He's so serious about it. As if it's...
My God, he's got space dementia.
I'm totally fine with moving off of The Rock to bag on Armageddon, yeah. It's like as if that's an established thing that the audience would also understand.
Oh yeah, of course, space dementia, that thing that notably exists.
Yeah, so it's well known. Star Trek's full of it, I know.
Space dementia.
Yes. So yes, it's not for nothing that I blame him for lines. I tend to forget about that, and I think I put it out of my head because it's so bad. Glass or plastic? Glass or plastic? And you think it's building up to some sort of really kind of clever line. It's like, Do you want to be buried in or you have your remains in a glass jar or plastic bag? Like, oh, really? Really?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
I had kind of forgotten about that line. I was assuming they were referring at some point to the little glass beads of VX or something that was there. It was like,
I'd forgotten of. Yeah.
nope, it's just dumb.
It's so clumsy and awkward and just it's such a naff line. It's so naff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but fortunately, lines quite that stupid are few and far between in the film. It's more of your kind of typical perfunctory.
Yes. I am doing the bad thing, but it is for the good cause, and because I am conflicted. No, you should do the good thing for the good reason, because it is the bad thing. Oh, this is the complicated conflict. Let's just shoot each other now. Okay. There we go. Moral conflict resolved, at least as far as we need to care about in the context of this action film. Let's just have an action film for the remainder of the hour and 10 minutes that's left of it. Fine, cool. I'm on board.
If there's any real problem in terms of one they've not mentioned, it's that the film underuses Tony Todd, which is a pity because Tony Todd can do a really good kind of. I don't think villain's quite the right word, but he's got such that really distinctive voice.
Yeah.
He's got a good sneer, and he's very much a bit part in this.
Yeah. Like, look, if you're going to cast Candyman as something, he better be more significantly badass than he was in this. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of a waste of Tony Todd, unfortunately. The rest of it, though, I mean, it's just, it feels very 90s, and in other ways, it doesn't feel all that old in some of its action scenes.
Yeah.
I think it's aged pretty well, actually. It's still really solidly entertaining.
Yeah, I think, talking a little bit off the top of my head, but there's not an awful lot of this that would be CG. I think it all stands up, I think, mostly as practical stuff. I guess maybe there's a lot of that the very big thermite explosion at the end, which would be, clearly they didn't actually bomb Alcatraz, so I suppose that one must have had a little bit of enhancement, but the rest of it I think is fairly practical base. I don't think there's anything too things like the actual effects of the VX gas is really well done. That's really gross and ooh, that's great.
It's accurate, but yes, it's well done. The good makeup there.
Yeah.
And you don't see it much, but you don't need to. You set the film up at the beginning with that. It's like, oh, right, we kind of know what's at stake there.
Yes, this is bad.
And you don't see anything else till Bokeem Woodbine at the end, but that's all you need. And yeah, there's a couple bits of ropey either rear projection or green screen in it. Though sometimes those are just pickups rather than it didn't work during shooting, so like maybe they're kind of constrained for time or resources afterwards. So I let those pass. And actually, there's the scene when the F-18s are on their way to Alcatraz when they fly under the Golden Gate Bridge. I kind of think that was real. It looked it. I mean, maybe it wasn't, but I was pretty convinced by that. Whether they maybe just got permission to fly under it one day or something like that. But yeah, that was quite convincing. And so there's not much you would need to change. You'd maybe have better effects on that one time you do see the bomb go off. But I wonder with so much potential in CGI at its disposal, if you were to make it now, whether you would kind of go over the top.
Yeah.
And that would kind of ruin it because it's actually the character stuff between Stanley and Mason that's actually the most interesting stuff.
Yeah.
And then, just some alright firefights and stuff and a couple of a bit silly, I guess, but kind of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom reminiscent cart scenes and things.
Yeah.
So it's maybe that's why it's one of Michael Bay's best films, but it's quite low key, at least relatively.
Yes, by his standards, yes.
Yes, yeah. And there's a flame machine, of course. Let's not forget that. What is the function of the flame machine?
Flames,
obviously. Apparently, even at the time, Michael Bay had acknowledged, that there's a plot hole here, and that why would that be running? I guess that's good. I mean, said it's just kind of fun, and it's not bothering me. I'm just amused by it. I would say the plot holes more as like, why does the flame machine exist? But yes, it allowed me to talk about it and be quite amused doing so. So, yeah, there's its utility.
Yes. It served its purpose well.
Indeed.